I'm Autumn Harry, I'm 23 years old and a member of the Pine Lake Paiute tribe. I'm studying here at the University of Nevada, Reno, studying environmental science, pursuing my bachelor's degree. There were about 40 of us. We gathered downtown last Monday, and we were there to really just show support and bring awareness to the Reno community about how we're celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. So we don't call it Columbus Day. To us, it's Indigenous Peoples Day, and it's just a time for us to really reflect on our ancestors and all of the how hard they had to fight for us to be here today. And so that's what we were really there, is just to sing songs and to offer prayers for that reason. It'd be really good to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day because of the history that Columbus has. And I know that through the different Western education systems and through public schools, the truth isn't really taught about Columbus. But Columbus really does represent genocide to our people. He came and he, they say he discovered America, but I mean, we were here long before he arrived. So what happened is we had, like I said, we gathered into a small group initially when we started. There was about 40 of us, I would say, and we really just gathered there in a circle, offering songs and prayers. And after that gathering, we had decided to walk to the Reno Arch, which was only 2 blocks from where we had originally started. And so we began marching, and it was a really good feeling. We were marching along the sidewalk, and everyone had their signs up, and we were just, having a really nice walk. And there were multiple times where we would hear people driving by yelling like racial slurs and just really like saying offensive things towards us. And for me, I just tried to ignore it and just continued walking. And so once we finally got to the arch, we had all stood across the crosswalk to take a picture in front of the arch because it is an iconic landmark in Reno. And so while we were taking a picture, I was in the middle of the arch, right in the middle of the street, and I just remember looking forward, looking north up Virginia, and I just saw this truck making its way towards us. And at that time, it was after sunset, so it was getting dark at that time, and the truck, what stood out to me the most is that it didn't have its headlights on. And so for me, that was already a trigger for something, and I didn't have a good feeling from seeing that. And the truck approached, its windows were down, its headlights were off, and I could hear people from the truck. There were 2 men in the truck. I could hear them yelling things. I couldn't make out exactly what they were saying, but they were telling us to move, and a couple people had approached the vehicle to say, hey, you guys need to turn around, you need to reverse because there's people here in the road. And so at that time I had already made sure that I was out of the way of the vehicle because I already had a bad feeling and I wasn't sure what their intentions were, but I did feel threatened. So I made sure that I was out of the way, and I was just watching, trying to figure out what was going on because I could hear yelling from the vehicle. And so they had approached us, they had moved their vehicle up, so they were within our space. And there were women who were standing in front of the vehicle, and then all of a sudden the guy just, he stepped on his brake, and there was sort of a little jolt. And again, I was just so focused on the women in front of the truck. I wasn't really paying attention to anything else, but I can still see the look on the women's faces. And they were terrified. They didn't know what was happening, and they had tried to get out of the way, but then at that point, the guy had just stepped on the gas. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know who had gotten run over or who was injured. But then after they fled the scene, there was a woman who was lying on the street. And later it was found out that she's a grandmother, and she had grandchildren who had been with her when that happened. And so there were women, there were children, there were elders, and there were even infants in this crowd that these men decided to drive through. These two men were sitting at our rally, and they were sitting, within our circle while we offered songs and prayers. And then at some point when we started marching, that's when they got into their truck and followed us. The police did catch up with the men later on, and they weren't detained, they weren't taken in for really questioning, but there was no field sobriety test done, there was no drug test done or alcohol test. So I think in any other situation when a person would even drive, off the road, or especially like driving through a crowd, I think that's sort of like a common procedure that would take place, is to at least see if these guys were under the influence of something. Sunday we had another march downtown, and that was actually organized by a man who's not from this area, but he found out what had happened last week, and so he definitely wanted to come down to Reno and show his support and really stand in solidarity with our Native community here in Northern Nevada. And the walk was just really about healing and revisiting the spot where all of this had occurred, and just saying a prayer to make sure that that's no longer a negative space and that we can continue moving forward and in a healing way. Because, like I said, going through that, it's a lot of trauma, and it's a lot of trauma for the families who are there and for the families who are involved. To go see the arch, you automatically have those memories of what you had to witness on Indigenous Peoples Day. So we just really wanted to have some healing so that people can no longer associate that space in a negative way, and we can begin moving forward. And I think now we just have to focus on making sure that there's justice for these two men who attacked our people. If you have a person who actually ran over people and ran over a grandmother, and they're only facing a misdemeanor, to me that's not justice. This was a hate crime. Like I said, they were at our circle. I believe it was premeditated. They had planned this. They had planned to get into their truck and to follow us. So there's definitely some premeditation behind their act. And there were also two other people from who were outside of the vehicle who got charged, and their charge was simple battery. The charges that the two protesters are facing could possibly be more severe than the driver, and they might have higher fines and could possibly be facing more time in jail than the driver of the truck who plowed through these people. If you listen to people, especially the women who were in front of the vehicle, one of them was able to get out of the way just in the nick of time and luckily wasn't injured. But she has even made statements saying that she fully supports the people who had approached the driver's side and the passenger side window, because they were trying to protect the people in front of the truck, and they were trying to protect all those that were there and that were in danger. And like I said, my cousin, he has a family, he has a girlfriend, and his little 2-year-old was also there at the scene. So that's who he was trying to protect. And I really don't feel that they should be charged with anything, especially something as the same level as the driver. But yeah, I really, what do I want to say? Yeah, I just don't think that the Reno PD has been fair in this process. It's been really hard to see different hateful comments coming from people within the Reno community, because I do consider myself a part of this community as well. And to know that there are these people surrounding you who have, maybe not so nice views about you, It's disheartening, but at the same time, there is so much support out there, and I think as long as we can continue building our own community, and building a community that can be supportive of one another, I think that's the first step. But I think to combat hate and violence, for me, we have to use prayer, and we have to make sure that we continue to be loving people, regardless of what other people think about us. All of us just gathering together, we really were standing up against violence, and we were standing up against hatred, and it's really unfortunate that that incident had to happen, especially on Indigenous Peoples Day. But we're gonna continue fighting. We're at this point where we're trying to gain more information right now, and we're trying to definitely develop a strategy on how to go about this, because there are different levels. You know, you have the municipal level, you have the civil level, you have the federal level where you're looking at the Department of Justice. So our first priority is making sure that the Department of Justice does get involved in this. And we're trying to get another outside agency like DOJ, like the Department of Justice, because I don't think the Reno PD has really done their job, and I don't think that we can really rely on them to take this case further. So we're gonna have to go at a higher level than just the Reno Police Department. I think that if this man only gets charged with a misdemeanor, I think, you know, this incident has really become global and nationwide news, and basically the whole world is watching Reno right now. And if this man only gets charged with a misdemeanor, I think for me that tells other people around the world, especially who have the same hateful way of thinking, that they can also get away with these same crimes and only get charged a misdemeanor. For me, the best way to respond to hate is with prayer and with love.